call the meeting to order. I'd just like to start by saying Chair Gill is not able to be here tonight, so I guess I'm stepping up in the vice chair role to fill in tonight, unless somebody has another change of plans. So starting with that, I'd like to, Marty, can you call the roll?
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Castillo?
Here.
Ms. Gill? She's not? That's right. Ms. Litton? Here. Mr. Reisner? Here. And Ms. Russell? Here. Thank you.
Thank you. And will you join me in the pledge, please? The flag is there.
Oh, there. Okay.
It's an itty bitty one.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Are there any additions to the agenda that anybody would like to make? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second from anyone? All right. Thank you, Mr. Redinger. No, Ms. Litton, sorry. Okay, then may all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Don't think so. Okay. So, motion carries. So then, Dr. Noonan, I will turn it over to you for item 2.01, the GMHS site logistics.
All right. For some reason, I'm the only one that didn't get a microphone. Maybe that was on purpose, John. No, I'm just kidding. Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for your flexibility and being here at Mount Daniel this evening for our work session. We're really excited to be able to come to a different spot, and we are, the reason that we're here, for those of you in the community that might be looking for us, is because we are in the middle of getting ready to make our big move to our new central office on Friday. At this point, we are almost all the way packed, and we'll spend the rest of the day on Friday packing, and on Saturday the movers come and will move us over all in one fell swoop. I was in today to look at the updated site at the new central office. The carpet's in, the tiles in, the sink's in, the cabinetry's in, the countertops are in, everything's working, and it really looks beautiful. So we've got a lot of things going on right now logistically. Not only that move, but we also started our move yesterday with our second graders moving over to Mount Daniel from Thomas Jefferson. So if you were going down Oak Street at any point, up and down Oak Street, we had lots of things happening. So had a really nice opportunity to get that move started, and they should be wrapping up by Friday, which leads us to then our move on Saturday of the central office. But the reason that the information this evening's on is because George Mason High School has also begun. I don't know if you've had a chance to go out, but I did. I couldn't keep myself away yesterday and went by first thing in the morning, and there were some barricades up, and today they were drilling in posts for the chain link fence. The chain link fence is almost all up at this point. Now they're putting up the sheeting that will go around it to obscure some of the view. Not too much, hopefully we'll still be able to see, but more than anything to keep some of the dust and the like down. But things are happening. A trailer got moved in and is on top of the tennis courts. So that'll be the new home of Gil Bain for a while they're on site. So this evening, Kristen is going to present to you all some of the site logistics. And these are important pieces that you've seen before, but we just want to make sure, again, for the sake of the community, that we've said it, and then we've said it again a different way, and then we've said it one more time, just to make sure that everybody's clear about how you get in and how you get out of the site during construction. So hopefully if you did go over there, and I know some of you did, you were easily sort of able to make your way along the what will be part of Mustang Alley, and then there's a jog off of that down to where Husky Loop will land, and then also in the front of the high school on the Leesburg Pike side. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to talk a little bit about logistics.
Thank you so much. So the first slide that I just wanted to go over, this is the full logistics slide that was shared at the Sunday series. Jennifer Max has shared this a few times. So that fence that Peter was talking about is represented in this graphic by the red outline that goes around the white area, and that white area is the construction area. You can see on there is a rectangle in kind of a maroon color. That's where the trailer for the construction team goes. Our owner's representative staff from Brailsford and Dunleavy will be right inside Mary Ellen Henderson. So Mary Ellen Henderson is accommodating them. So they'll be right on site, but we'll also have some privacy and separation. So we think that's really the best of both worlds. Also orienting you to this overall site, the two other things that I wanted to point out are this summer in that kind of aquamarine color. As we look around the edge, that aquamarine color is the temporary parking that they're going to be adding over the summer to ensure that when the school starts, we'll maintain our 400 parking spaces. So that'll be added over the summer. And then those explanation points are our emergency egress. So when we think about the site logistics for this summer, at Mary Ellen Henderson, the only activity we're going to have there going on are summer camps in the gym. So when we look at parents going to summer camps at Mary Ellen Henderson, what they'll need to do to enter that site is we'd like them to come in from Leesburg Pike. They'll turn into the entrance off Leesburg Pike, Route 7 for the high school. They'll follow that internal access road, and then they'll turn and go through our Husky Loop, dropping their students off for the gym at the front door. When they leave that parking lot, they have to turn right. And our hope is that then they'll use the super secret passageway that Mary Beth Conley has talked about, where when you turn right or going westbound on Route 7, you can use the access ramp towards Metro, stay through Metro, and then come out on Haycock and turn either way coming back into the city. So this is the drop-off solely for the students that are at camps in the Henderson gym. When we think of all of our other programs this summer, we've really moved everything else to George Mason. So that includes summer school for both the middle and high school. It includes all of the camps, both inside Mason using all of the gyms as well as the fields. And then our daycare or our ASAP program is also at George Mason for this summer. So for parents that are dropping students off for any of these programs, they have two different options. The top graphic shows parents who are entering off Haycock Road. They can enter off Haycock and then use the loop, which is commonly known as the flagpole loop, or door 19, dropping students off at the front of the building there. We would like all of the students for any of those programs, including the field use, to be dropped off there so they can then be escorted safely all across to the field, which I'll show in just a minute. Parents coming from Route 7 can also use that same entrance off Route 7 into George Mason that we showed for the middle school, dropping their students off at that door of George Mason and then continuing along the access road to again turn right onto Route 7 and then use the super secret way back into the city. When we look at the 4th of July fireworks, this graphic really talks about both the 4th of July fireworks and how we're going to access the fields once the construction fences are fully up. So on this graphic, that blue dashed line shows a temporary walkway that's ADA accessible that's going to be added to use throughout the life of the construction project. So it's going to go from George Mason High School, it's going to cross over that roadway, and it's going to enter onto the Virginia Tech site. So it'll go through the fence, and there'll be a gravel path that's ADA accessible that they'll be able to use to get all the way down to the stadium field. Also over the summer, Gilbane is constructing that yellow sidewalk between the stadium field and the baseball field. That's the permanent ADA accessible sidewalk that will allow people to get from the baseball field to the stadium field. So when we talk about getting people across Mustang Alley to use that path to the stadium field, these are all graphics of that crosswalk. So they'll cross from the corner of George Mason High School across that Mustang Alley and then through the fence. There'll be a pathway cut through that fence, which is what these graphics are showing. So overall, the other thing we wanted to point out for everyone is all of the parking spots that'll be available this summer because we have a decreased number of people that are at the school. We have less parking than we normally have, but more than we ever anticipate needing. So there's 304 spots available, and this graphic shows in counted numbers where all of those different parking spots are. Right, what you noticed right away if you were at the high school, as Dr. Noonan indicated, is that parking in the back where the bus loop is behind Mary Ellen Henderson has already been blocked off. And you can see in this graphic that that's covered by the construction zone. So that parking is offline, but people can park between Mary Ellen Henderson and George Mason in that purple area. They can park in the Husky Loop, which is the yellow area at the bottom of your screen. And then the parking at George Mason is indicated by the blue parking adjacent to Route 7. And then the parking at the top in red and green. So all of those are the parking available for people over the summer. So that's just a brief overview of our site logistics for summer. I want to thank John Brett, who's really helped communicate these, and Sevi Padilla, who went and met with Danny Schlitt to make sure the people at our summer camps knew them as well. But thank you for the opportunity to share them this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Are there comments or questions from anyone on the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for a good presentation, clearly presented. How much extra time should parents be budgeting for the drop-off process?
So I was there, I went Monday morning, as did a number of us, to really see the traffic flow, and it was going pretty smoothly. I think one of the things that we realized with summer camp is every week we have different students attending camp, which is why Sevi went and met with Danny Schlitt to really try to get the word out to parents. But I would say traffic was flowing pretty smoothly. Now at this point, we don't have a lot of construction traffic, right? So I would say as the summer continues on and we start removing dirt, that parents may need to plan for additional time, but so far it seemed very smooth.
I would just add, Otto was at camp this week, and we got clear email messages on Sunday telling us exactly your camp drops off at this place. You know, I thought they did a good job of communicating, so I thought it went well.
Oh, yes, and we have put up signage to help as well in terms of directing the flow of both pedestrians and cars.
Any other comments or questions?
It's more a question about the fall. So that part they're paving behind MEH, is that where MEH staff will park? Sorry, is that a bad
No, it's
question?
okay. When we look at the parking overall, we haven't designated which parking spots are available to staff. We know that we have currently designated parking lots for our students, but beyond that, parking is open to staff, so staff from any building could park. We have gathered parking information from each of our schools, and we know that we do have enough parking. We've really talked about, for people that are parking farther away, how can we make this pleasant and enjoyable, right? How can we reward people for the extra steps, right? What can we do to encourage people that have farther to walk and really kind of make this a fun part of the construction process as much as we can? But parking for staff will really occur on a first-come, first-served basis, as we're currently planning it.
But will students still be in the same place they are now? Of course, I have a student who's very concerned about this.
Yes.
Will we get the senior lot?
Our intention is not to move where the students park.
I'm just going to add to that to also suggest that parking the structure of the parking itself for students may look different next year than it does this year. For example, this year students are assigned a parking space. We're probably going to move away from the assignment of parking spaces only because it's completely inefficient. So if a student is out, nobody can park in that space, and we need every space that we can get during the year. Although, as Ms. Michael indicated, our data suggests that we need about 340 spaces, and we'll have 400 spaces available. So we'll have a surplus of about 60, but that hasn't taken into account those folks that are coming in and out for different purposes, whether it's parents or staff from central office.
And I would just say it's fine if you need to make the students park further away. I'm not saying they need the closest parking spot.
Yeah. And we're still in conversations, and will be for a while, I think, with Virginia Tech to see if there's some way that we may be able to use some of their parking on that corner as well, because that's actually some of the best located parking on the site.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I will ask one, Ms. Michael, which is the gravel path going to the back to the field for ADA accessibility with gravel and a wheelchair. I'm just sort of making sure we're really okay on that one.
Yes, it will be hard packed gravel, and it will be ADA accessible. That's what Gilbane is telling us. Getting everyone safely to the 4th of July fireworks and using that path for our students once school begins is really critical. So we'll ensure that it is accessible.
Thanks. If there isn't anything, Mr. Castillo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 4th of July planning, in my experience, a lot of people also kind of just wash over the Virginia Tech lot, and there's that path that goes from George Mason through the Virginia Tech site over to the Metro. Well, that'll remain open and passable, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Good. Thanks.
Okay. All right, not seeing anything else. Thank you, Commissioner Noonan. We can go ahead and move forward on to item 2.02, the GMHS land transfer update. All right,
We've got the art of the beauty of the building out of the way. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the actual nuts and bolts of the land transfer. And tonight we have Jeremy Root from Blankenship and Keith joining us, and Trish Minson, who's been leading this on behalf of the schools as well. So I'm going to actually turn it over to them because they have the details and can inform you much better about these legal issues than I can. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. On board docs tonight, there are a number of documents that relate to the land transfer. The first 3 documents are the plats that have been prepared by Walter Phillips. These are the version that was submitted to the Planning Commission yesterday that divide the land where the high school currently sits into parcels A, B, C, and D. I know this is this has changed a little bit, but this is the final iteration that we anticipate being attached to the deeds that will convey the parcel. So the first 3 documents are those Walter Phillips documents. We also have the deed of re-subdivision, vacation, rededication, dedications, and conveyances. That's the legal document that will be recorded in land records that transfers parcels A, B, and C to the school and consolidates those into one, and then conveys parcel D to the city. There's also the exchange agreement that goes hand in hand with the deed that will be recorded that explains that the land that the fields are now located on was previously owned by the city. Now those will be owned by the school board, and the land where the economic development is located, where our school currently is, will then be owned by the city. And the final document up there tonight is a draft that has not yet gotten the city's review and approval, so just want to be very clear, this is just the draft version, but this is a deed of lease by which we will lease back the high school because it will be on land that is owned by the city once we record the deed and enter into the exchange agreement. And one thing to point out about the deed of lease, it is going to have language that mirrors the language in the city's comprehensive agreement with their partners, the economic development partners. There is a monetary penalty that the city will have to pay to EYA if the land is not ready to be turned over to them. And so written into our lease agreement with the city is if we do not vacate the high school within a certain amount of time, then we will owe rent on using that building, and that rent then would go back to the city to pay the penalty to EYA. And Kristen, as Michael has worked with our insurer to make sure that then that amount of rent that we would have to pay in the event of a catastrophic event where the new high school isn't ready to be moved into, that we would be covered by insurance there. So Mr. Root is here. He's done the main laboring oar of getting these documents prepared, and he is the one with the most expertise here as it comes to land records. So that was my high-level view. Jeremy, I welcome you to correct anything or to clarify any mistakes I made as it comes to land law.
Very good. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. The only real correction that I would say is that this deed does not consolidate the parcels. So the city will be conveying a number of parcels to the school board. School board conveys parcel D to the city. There will be a separate instrument that will formally consolidate all of those parcels from the city into a single parcel. But that is not before the board at this time. But as Trish said, the new document that you all haven't seen, which is the lease, and that rent provision that's included in here is significant, but it is tied directly to the comprehensive agreement that the city entered into with the developer.
Just to clarify, just in terms of timing, because I think that that's an important component of the question that may come up about this rental provision. As I understand it, there wouldn't be any rental due to the city from general government from the schools up and until August 4th, 2021. And we anticipate being able to turn the building over barring some catastrophic event, as early as January of 2021, more likely the February-March timeline, so we have a couple of months to get everything out. But it gives us a 6 months or so lag time between when we anticipate completion and when they have to take the property for development. So hopefully that's helpful to know that we fully expect to be out of there. This is really a catastrophic event provision, and that's why our insurance company has agreed to pay the rental on that property should there be the need.
And one more timing piece. As of right now, we anticipate that the city council is going to review these documents and approve them at their meeting on July 8th. And then the school board would do the same on July 9th. So we wanted to give it to you all in advance, even though particularly the deed of lease is a draft form. The others are, we've spent more time on them and have had them for a little bit longer, but wanted to bring it to you now so that you have time to review it, look over it, let us know if you have questions or concerns in advance of both city council and then the school board being asked to take action on it next month.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vinson and Mr. Root and Dr. Noonan. Are there any comments or questions from the board on this item? Mr. Castillo?
I was waiting for Mr. Reidinger to ask this question, but since he didn't, what exactly triggers the insurance payments? Because when you say catastrophic, that means earthquakes, locusts, frogs. It doesn't mean project delays. So I'm concerned about what catastrophic really means.
Sure. So in the event of delays, if they're construction delays, right, our contract with Gilbane has liquidated damages, so we have recourse there. But a catastrophic event is
I'm just going to interject.
Sure.
Which covers the cost that would be the rent should the rent provision kick in after August. So if there is an issue that is related to a construction delay, the liquidated damages would cover that rental amount. So it's just
Up to how much?
up to,
I think it's 1.7 million, 50% of their total fees.
so I just want to make sure that I interjected. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Correct.
just want to make sure.
No, thank you. So at a catastrophic failure would be, let's say we take possession of the building in December. They turn the building over to us in mid-December. The building is complete. So we now have occupancy of the building. We're moving in our furniture, and sometime over winter break, as we're moving in the furniture, something happens and the building burns to the ground. Right at that point, that building is ours and we own it. Right, and we've taken occupancy of it. So in that case, our insurance would kick in. We would have that catastrophic event. If we were to remain in the current high school while they're rebuilding our brand new high school, in that case, our insurance policy would cover that cost of rent for us to stay in our existing building.
Okay, so we have up to, so if we're getting up to some pretty eye-watering amounts here. How many days of liquidated damages does our, it looks to me like about 200.
What's the number, 1.7? I'll just do it by the biggest number at 70,000 or 7,000. It's 242 days, so it's probably slightly more than 242 days.
Okay. And then after we take possession is when insurance would kick in.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Did you say 50% of the rent or 100% of the rent?
So our contract with Gilbane caps the liquidated damages at 50% of their fee. So the liquidated damages in total capped at 50% is about 1.7 million. The rent from our insurance, it would pay 100% of the cost. We insured it would pay up to $10,000 a day and have that in writing, so that exceeds this amount here. That rent could be used in this case if we had to rent back the high school that we still would own and still be in. It would also help us, let's say we really had moved into the new building and then the old building was torn down for the new economic development and something happened to our new building. That rent could be used if we had to rent space elsewhere after that point. Right, and that's capped at $10 million.
Any other comments or questions?
The one thing, it's not a question, it's more of a sort of a comment. Excuse me. The comprehensive agreement is what the comprehensive agreement is, and so that money will have to be paid. And I'm just glad we have insurance for it. Nickel and diming over, negotiating over the amounts to be paid doesn't seem, it's all coming from the taxpayers if there's a problem, so, or the insurer as the case may be, so seems reasonable.
that's a worst-case scenario. And we just hope that it won't happen, but we're covered if we do. If it does.
We found here that it's comfortable in construction to plan for worst-case scenarios.
I found that out.
If there are no other questions, I'd actually like to ask, just to make sure we're getting clarity on the timeline. So, Ms. Minzen, so we have these draft documents before us. The City Council will be reviewing substantially the same documents on their meeting on the 8th of July, and we're then taking action hopefully on the 9th of July. If there are changes that are negotiated between now and then, presumably we'll be seeing those appearing.
I can share those updates with the board, yes.
Okay. And then I'm trying to make sure there isn't anything else that people would like to have answered before going in there. Okay. All right. Well, that's the useful piece for me anyway, is to make sure that I understand the timing of things and make sure that we're on track. So, okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here today.
No, I appreciate it.
All right. So then I think we are at this point ready to move on to item 2.03, the monthly budget report.
I'll turn this one over to Ms. Michael.
So thank you so much. Posted for this evening are the monthly budget reports for activity in the months of April and May. Typically, when we finish a month, it takes us a little bit of time after the month to get things posted. So in May, our school board meetings were earlier to help with budget adoption. So that's why you're seeing tonight both the April and May report posted now instead of having the April report posted in May. So in both of the reports this evening, there are no updates from the revenue from the state as compared to our projection in March, which was based on the update that we received from the state budget at that time. When we look at our revenue overall, so our projections are consistent. We're projecting having just about $158,000 less revenue than we had budgeted for. When we look at our expenditures, we've updated our expenditures for both April and May. They're tracking as expected. We're expecting to have about $225,000 less in expenditures than we budgeted. So that is lower than last year, which is exactly as we would have expected because we reprojected all of our salaries and benefits. When you look at our other expenditures, we're currently showing that we're going to spend more than we've budgeted. That's what we're anticipating now based on the additional expenditures that we had in this fiscal year for the floor and Mount Daniel, as well as some of the moving expenses that occurred in June as compared to July. But we will have abated rent next fiscal year, and any savings from that will be added to ending balance to make up for the additional funding that we spent in this current fiscal year. So following the summary chart on page 1, as we have each month, on page 2, we have the 3-year comparison to show for each of those categories our budget and the available budget in 17, 18, and 19, as well as a percentage available. When you look at that again, we're tracking very much as we have in the previous years, particularly with expenditures. And then when you look at the graphic on the next page that shows the chart version instead of the graphic version instead of the chart. One of the things that really stands out is you'll notice when you look at revenue, in this current year we haven't yet posted or received the transfer from the city. So that's why you see such a giant negative bar. So when you look at expenditures and getting things posted, I would say between the city's move, our move, Melissa Ryman, who's their deputy finance director, has been out on a medical leave. So we're really behind, I would say, in terms of getting things posted. So you can clearly see that reflected in terms of some of that revenue posting. But rest assured, we're continuing to work on getting all those things done. I would like to thank Michelle Kopic for all of her great work in terms of getting things posted. And we'll continue to work to get things done as we end our fiscal year. And then we'll be back to report to the board our preliminary numbers for year end in June, and then we'll get those final numbers for you in the fall. So that's the budget update for both April and May.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Are there any comments or questions from the board? So I'd just like to, seeing no comments or questions, I guess I'll just make sure I'm clarifying. So net as of the end of May, it's slightly less in revenue, but even more less in expenditures. So slightly positive in terms of cash on hand, as it were.
That is Correct.
But we're still in the process of finalizing the city transfer, and that's, of course, the biggest chunk of the budget coming in on the revenue side. So estimates on the completion of that in terms of getting that in place and the timing and all of that?
So the city manages cash flow, so even though the transfer hasn't posted in our accounts, obviously the funding, the city has it. So we would anticipate that later in June, we'll have all of the transfers posted, so the transfer from the general government to us. We also have some interfund transfers that need to post. So funding that goes to the food service fund, for example, in support of summer school, that transfer hasn't posted. There's a transfer for indirect expenditures from the daycare fund, so we expect all of those to be posted later in June.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Redding?
Sorry, one of the things I noticed is that it looks like there haven't been any contingency expenditures so far this year. Is that right?
No, we spent contingency funding earlier this year. What happens is the reason you're not seeing it on the contingency line is because when we came to the school board and asked for use of contingency funding, both for the Mary Ellen Henderson floor, and then we also used it for the math textbooks, at that time we did a budget transfer and we moved that funding into the account where the expenditures occurred. So for example, in the math textbooks, when we used contingency funding, we did that budget transfer and moved it into textbooks and then made the purchase from there. So in general, what you'll see in terms of contingency is over the course of the year, the budget decreases as we're making that budget transfer, but you won't see actual expenditures there.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. So we're projecting roughly $350K left in the contingency fund at the end of the year. Are we expecting any additional contingencies to come up before the end of the year?
No, so most of that contingency funding that's left there, a large chunk of it is called a contingency for other revenue. So during the course of the year, if we receive additional grant funding, right, we take that funding, receive it, and then we'll make a transfer out of this contingency fund. So we don't anticipate other expenditures from there for the remaining part of June.
Thank you.
But we also didn't get the revenue that goes with it.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Michael. Appreciate it. Dr. Noonan, I think we're done with that discussion. So now there's another item.
Yeah, I just would like to, I'd like to say a couple things if I can. Certainly this last week, in my opinion, marked the end of another very successful year here in FCCPS, and we're really proud of our students, our staff, faculty, parents, kin, fictive kin, and committed community members for their amazing and inspiring and uplifting work. You all prove and affirm to me every day, you and the community every day, that we are indeed better together. The celebratory tone of the final week of school was muted due to an issue with or a stain on the GMHS yearbook. Unfortunately, a parental ad submitted to and published in the yearbook had reopened wounds and in many ways re-traumatized our community, and for this we are sorry. We receive and review so many ads, photos, and quotes from so many members of our community for publication in our yearbooks. We entrust the community, those submitting ads, to help us ensure their content is appropriate, in line with our FCCPS values, and worthy of inclusion. Regrettably, this ad slipped by us. When discovered, FCCPS immediately communicated to the students and the families impacted. In fact, one of the families has my personal cell phone. We hope they feel supported and cared for by us and the broader FCCPS community. Going forward, we are committed to assessing our yearbook policies and procedures and doing our part to produce yearbooks that are truly a celebration of our students' and community's achievements. But we will continue to rely on the entire community to do right by one another, to respect one another, and to ensure the safety and well-being of all our FCCPS students. We cannot do this work alone. It takes a community to raise our children and to produce a yearbook, and we must work together towards this end. I look forward to our days ahead, to our growth, including our new high school, and what we can achieve together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. Any thoughts at all from anyone on the board? Otherwise, I know what our next item would be. Okay, well, in the absence of any further comments, I will say that I appreciate that statement, Dr. and I appreciate the sentiment behind it. It was unfortunate, but I think the approach that you're taking right now is the right thing to do. But that's just me speaking for myself, so. I don't know if there are anybody else wish to comment, otherwise we'll go ahead and move into our next item.
Just briefly also, I'd like to echo the statements of the chair. I think that it was an unfortunate situation and the schools have reacted quickly. And I believe that the path that we're taking is the right one. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Then our next item is 3.01. We will be moving into a closed session. And so would someone like to read us into that session, please?
I'll do it.
Sure.
Okay, pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, I move that the board convene a closed meeting for the following purpose: to discuss or consider the identified subject matter. Personnel under Section 2.2-3711A1, in particular, superintendent's annual evaluation, and legal matters under Section 2.2-3711A7, in particular, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Reininger. Ms. Goodell?
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Castillo. Ms. Litton.
Aye.
Mr. Reitinger.
Yes.
Ms. Russell. And Mr. Webb.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So we are going to move to the conference room down the hall so that these folks, fine folks, can break it down and get on home.